or call 611 711.
Find a fabulous range of Venetian, vertical, roller and pleated blinds, including space-saving into at Looney's of Ramsey. Discover the advantage of free measuring, professional fitting and a full aftercare service. Let Looney's of Ramsey guide you to your perfect blinds.
Looking for a gift that's a little bit different? Visit quirky.im. The best of the island delivered to your door. Jewellery, food, experiences, clothes and more. Quirky.im, the quality Manx artisan store.
Your business can grow its market share 4 times faster when you use the radio. Be heard by nearly 30,000 islanders by calling us on 682 600. Manx Radio are proud to support local businesses and communities and help bring the island back to life.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint, furnished by Magic Carpets.
Good afternoon, it's 6 minutes past 12. The Mannin Line through to 1 on Manx Radio, our daily public affairs programme. Your views, your reflections on matters, and today, the view of Dr. Alex Allinson, the Education, Sport and Culture Minister, Ramsey MHK. 69 days we've had of no further confirmed positive tests for coronavirus. No active cases. We stick at 336. 8,033 concluded tests. 48 people awaiting results of a test. No one's waiting a test at the moment. Good afternoon, Dr. Allinson.
Good afternoon.
Good to see you as well. And again, it's very easy if we say it very quickly, 69 days without a confirmed positive test. And yet, this thing is raging in other places.
It is. I mean, we're in our own little bubble, aren't we, on the Isle of Man? We've done so well so far to get the virus off of our island, but we can see it's still out there. The problem hasn't gone away. Lots of different countries are trying to tackle it in different ways, and the reality is sooner or later it will come back to our island. And what we need to do is be vigilant, create the right structures to deal with that, but also get people used to that risk. And I think the Isle of Man people have done incredibly well, but this thing isn't going to go away.
With your medical hat on, did you think we'd get to this point?
To be honest with you, no, I didn't. And I think we need to go back to March when we were looking at some of the pictures from Italy, small towns in Italy with people dying on hospital in hospital corridors on trolleys, and that was the reality that was going to hit us here with Nobles. And again, we've never done a quarantine before. We've never closed our borders before. We've never done any of the things that we've had to do to fight this virus, but we've done it together. And I'm incredibly grateful for that, genuinely, because government can only do so much. Government can come up with ideas and say what we'd like things to happen, but it's up to the Isle of Man people to then take that on board, and they have done.
And again, as you say, in this unnatural bubble that we're in at the moment, as you say, when we look back, there were some grim times with Italy. Even today, 854 people died in Mexico. Yeah. They've got 7,000 new cases in places like Iran, Russia, Indonesia, Bangladesh, and in India. It's raging. So at the beginning, everybody talked about flattening the curve. Have we flattened the curve?
We've done more than that. We've got rid of the curve. We, as in the Isle of Man people, have done far better than government ever expected. We did lots of modelling, and a lot of that was about the number of people going into hospital, and they did. We saw that right at the start. People were getting sick. They were having to go into Nobles. They're having to use the facilities there. We've flattened the curve. We've squashed it. We've got rid of the virus from our island. But we're part of the world, and we can't live in a bubble forever. Sooner or later, we have to start quantifying the risk and talking to people about what happens when we get more cases, when we start getting people coming back with infections onto the Isle of Man.
Should we still be using alcohol rub? Should we still be washing stuff down? Should we still be washing our hands?
Absolutely.
Everybody went washing hands mad, didn't they, in the beginning?
Well, they did. We had the potato song. We had loads of things, looking back.
I've forgotten that.
But actually, that's still the case. I mean, as Minister for Education, we've been putting hand washing stations outside all the schools. Right. I still want people to use those. Shops have been investing in hand sanitisers when you go in. Please use those. Our best line of defence really, when the virus comes back, is those really simple things, not coughing over people. If you're sick, don't go out. Wash your hands regularly. And if we do get another outbreak, we'll need to talk about social distancing again. But simple things like washing hands is so important. One of the interesting things going around to schools talking to teachers is it's something they've never really emphasised in schools. They've tried to, but it's deaf ears. Now all the kids are washing their hands regularly. And that will mean that when we get the winter vomiting bug, we might not, because kids are washing their hands. There are so many add-on effects with this. It's simple hygiene, but it works.
When does the flu vaccine start appearing?
We've got all the orders put in for that. We're going to try to bring that in earlier this year, so hopefully October, November. And certainly in the United Kingdom, they're looking at vaccinating or offering the vaccine to a much wider group of people, because that's one of the things we're preparing for now. Is if we get a bad winter, if we get lots of people getting flu, how do you tell the difference between that and coronavirus at the time when people may be coming or going across our borders? And that's one of the challenges we face, dealing with that risk in a mature way, but also looking after ourselves as individuals and looking after our NHS as well.
Coronavirus is what? Dry cough, difficulty in breathing, temperature?
Yes, but also it can cause other problems. Flu-like illnesses, aches and pains. It causes sometimes diarrhea and abdominal pain. It also, in some people, they lose their sense of smell or taste. We've learnt so much more about this virus since back in March, but it's still quite difficult to determine unless you do proper testing.
I don't know whether you're... have you seen what's happened with Madonna today?
No, I must admit.
Madonna is, how can we put it, one of the vaccine hesitancy brigade. And today Madonna put on her Instagram that a vaccine had already been found and that they're not releasing it because the rich want to get richer. Of course, it's all been taken down Instagram, but she has 15 million followers. How do we deal with anti-vaxxers and vaccine hesitancy people? Because if a vaccine comes for COVID, there will be some people who say, I'm not taking it.
And from my point of view, that's fine. I think certainly on the Isle of Man and in the United Kingdom, we've never had compulsory vaccination, as they do in lots of other countries, particularly in America. There are some people who don't want vaccinations. Actually, from a doctor's point of view, I need to sell that. I need to say it's safe, it's effective. But at the end of the day, people don't want vaccination. That's up to them. They've got to deal with the risk of getting infected. What I don't like, though, is some of the conspiracy theories around vaccination, which have got no scientific basis and which actually spread fear and distrust in the medical profession at a time when we really need to get away from both of those.
Well, they talk about ethical, legal issues around vaccination. Of course, vaccination's been around for a long, long time. I personally went to school with people who had polio. People who had very bad limps, and there was all the rumours that went round. Of course, it was caused by swimming pools. You could catch polio at a swimming pool. Smallpox arrived. Diphtheria, TB, everything that nowadays is nowhere to be seen in certainly in the Isle of Man. But how do we deal with? I mean, do you envisage that any vaccine on the Isle of Man would be voluntary?
Absolutely. We've always gone for that. In terms of the health profession. I think it's really important because there are some people who you can't vaccinate, some people who have reactions to them, some people with immune suppression who you can't give live vaccines to. What we have shown quite conclusively is the ability for vaccines to get rid of disease. Again, when I was growing up, we were worried about meningitis, and it swept through various universities across and schools. We've now got rid of that through effective vaccines. One of the interesting things about the coronavirus vaccine is, number one, whether we get it. Number two, when we get it and how effective it is. Because some of the vaccines, particularly in terms of influenza, sometimes don't. No vaccines are 100% effective. So you need to be very careful about giving promises. A vaccine isn't the golden bullet to get rid of this virus, nor is antibody testing. We've shown that as well. What we need to do is go back to basics in terms of hand washing, in terms of hygiene, in terms of looking after each other, but also building that resilience in terms of our society to get us through what could be quite a long period of risk.
What's the government's position on testing? at the moment? What's the situation with that? Who gets tested? What happens to the results?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of who gets tested, we're prioritising people within the health service themselves, or obviously people with symptoms. So the 111 line that was set up in record time in terms of it giving advice and then leading on to testing is still there. Luckily, at the moment, we haven't got anyone really coming up with symptoms, because we're that time of year. However, anyone who does will get tested straight away. And we've got results really within the same day almost now, because it's all done on Ireland and we've built up that facility. We're also doing voluntary testing for frontline care staff, for teachers, for a whole range of people who are involved there, and also doing testing for key workers who are coming over. So we've got the capacity for that. What other countries now are looking at, though, is expanding testing for people coming into the country. And that causes issues in terms of when you test, how you test, and also how long a quarantine period you need. And we've seen that only over the weekend in terms of the United Kingdom, bringing in quarantine again for people coming from Spain. I mean, a 14-day quarantine is the gold standard for trying to stop people spreading the virus. But in the future, as we expand our borders and in trying to get more people across for compassionate reasons or for economic reasons, we need to constantly look at what's best for our island. Can we shorten that period? Can we do more testing? Have we got the capacity for that testing? There are some big questions there.
Do you anticipate that the self-isolation period will lessen?
What we're doing in terms of government, so the Council of Ministers meets every week. We've actually got this on our agenda for tomorrow morning, looking at the testing programme. We're looking at what other countries have done, what their experience has been. Jersey have tried to do antibody testing and found that to be really not very helpful. Guernsey were doing testing within a couple of days of coming onto the island, and then if you had a second test after 7 days, you were free to go out, but not to go into clubs and restaurants, just in case. Because we know that if you do a test on the first day of somebody travelling into your island, you'll pick up about 5% of those who are infected. If you do it after 7 days, you'll get 80%. But if you do it after 14 days, you've got 99%. What sort of risk do we want on the Isle of Man? And it is risk. It's managing that risk. And that's a difficult question that government will have to wrestle with, but also communicate properly to the population. Because everyone wants to go on a holiday this time of year. But once you know how risky it is, you need to quantify that and you need to make up your own decision.
Do masks work?
Yes. And again, that's changed. When we started off this journey in March, we really weren't sure whether non-surgical masks, non-medical masks helped. We now have good evidence that they stop, if you've got coronavirus, they stop you transmitting it to a degree. And so we've seen a whole range of countries bringing them in certain environments when you can't socially distance, particularly on public transport, and in the United Kingdom now in shops. It's something that if we were to get a major outbreak on the island, we would go back to. Again, we've tried to do it voluntary. And there's been such a big culture change on the Isle of Man. If you'd have told me in March that you could send out an automated text to everyone on the island saying, put your mask on, and 95% of people would, I wouldn't have believed you. But actually people have taken on board the solidarity, the sense of community on our island to do the right thing, not just for them, but for their community, for their family, for their friends. And I think that's been one of the real lessons from this whole episode.
Dr. Alex Allinson, the Minister of Education, Sport and Culture, with us live on the Mannin Line today. If you want to get in touch, you can text... you can call 66 13 68. You can email studio@manxradio.com, or you can get in touch via the text as well. All you need to do is text 166 177 as well. Now, with your GP hat on today, what's happening this afternoon?
Well, we have quarterly GP meetings, and that means that most of the island's GPs are down at Keelderry, the educational centre next to Nobles. There is a sort of a skeleton staff. If anyone has an urgent medical problem, please phone the practice. They'll get a GP to see you. But what we're doing, I suppose, is learning the lessons from the last couple of months. It's the first time we've been able to sit down physically, as opposed to doing everything on Microsoft Teams. So we've got Gareth Davis, who's one of the consultants in the emergency department, going through the lessons learned what they did to deal with the number of people coming in, but also going through the preparations for the autumn and winter and what they're going to be doing at Nobles and how that obviously affects GPs. But we've then got a whole group of speakers coming to talk to us, people like Duncan Jerry, who's the consultant geriatrician, and Chris Till, who's one of our ITU consultants, looking at how GPs are going to deal with the winter, how we're going to manage patients who may be coming in with COVID-like symptoms during a time of year where people have lots of different symptoms from coughs and colds, and really, again, building that resilience into the system so that even if we do get another outbreak of coronavirus on our island, we don't have to go back to full lockdown. We can be far more nuanced in the way we treat it, so we don't actually have to get rid of all the services that we've only just started.
Lots of messages in today saying, when will the GP surgeries get back to normal? Who knows what normal is?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's dealing with the risk. And so I think almost all GP surgeries now have started having face-to-face consultations. Some of them are learning the lessons of online consultations, phone consultations, and using those to manage demand and manage people's problems. But all GP surgeries will be returning to face-to-face consultations, as they have been throughout this period. The question is whether they still need to wear masks and gowns, and that's something that public health have been incredibly useful with, in terms of giving that advice and giving those guidelines for us. One of the issues we have right across the medical profession is we're dealing with guidelines from the United Kingdom, from the British Medical Association, from the General Medical Council. They're in a very different situation there, very much higher risk than we are. But we're still trying to look after our key workers and also look after our patients.
Here's a note in that said, good afternoon, Dr. Allinson. Could you please ask the Minister, help answer how many parents on the Isle of Man will be able to take their sons or daughters to university, to start university, especially if we have to isolate for 14 days and return. My husband and I are both key workers, and this will be a nightmare. Does Dr. Allinson accept we need to rethink the 14-day quarantine for island residents who are returning from the UK, put the trust back in the hands of the people of the Isle of Man? We've done a good job up until now. From Paula.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. I've been dealing with people whose young children are going back to boarding school in the United Kingdom in September, and they've got similar concerns. And we know that a lot of university students will be going back to university, perhaps going for the first time. And we've been trying to work through the Cabinet Office to make that as safe as possible for them. At the moment, we've got a 14-day quarantine period when people come back. That's to protect them, but mainly to protect the community. We've got some vulnerable people in this community who've only just got out of shielding. We need to make sure that they can still shop and go around their daily lives without feeling at risk. So there's confidence there. We need to deal with the risk. As I said, council ministers meet on a weekly basis, and we are looking at how we can get the testing regime and the quarantine regime as good as possible. And we also will be looking at, in September, those people who need to go across to drop their children off at university and how we can make that as safe as possible for everyone.
Lots of questions also concerning, and Albert's got the consensus of this really. Everyone wants to go on holiday just now, and lots of people are saying, surely the people who say they want to go on holiday now or leave the Isle of Man are just being selfish. Don't they know that we've got into this position by having discipline about all this?
Yeah, I think Albert's got a good point. I don't think it's being selfish. A lot of the people I know who are going across to the United Kingdom are going across to see relatives. They're going across to see grandchildren they've never seen, to see elderly parents that they've only been able to talk to on FaceTime. So I don't think, I'm not blaming them or trying to make them feel guilty. The reality, though, is we've seen, particularly in the United Kingdom and across Europe, the virus is still there. It's still a risk. And we are in a very good position here. I don't want to jeopardise that. And that's why the council ministers take the quarantine and the testing extremely seriously. We will try to fine-tune it, but at the same time, we have to look after the health and of our entire nation and make sure everyone here is kept as safe as possible. OK, you are Education Minister, and lots of questions concerning education. The teaching unions say the government hasn't scheduled any meetings until the autumn term with reference to the teachers' pay and conditions dispute, yet the Minister says they'll be talking to the unions over the summer so we can hit the ground running. What's the situation? Are you talking to the unions or not? We are indeed. The last meeting was last week. One of the issues, obviously, is that some of the teaching unions have said that they want more money on the table. I've talked to Treasury. The Treasury Minister made quite a clear statement in Tynwald in terms of the budget and the real challenges that face us at the moment, and also the economic storm that's coming our way in terms of the whole global economy. At the moment, what we're trying to do is reach a settlement to stop strike action when schools restart in September. We've agreed a pay settlement in line with the UK, which I think does a lot in terms of recruitment and retention, both of new staff and senior staff. And any time the unions want to talk to me, we're more than happy to. They've been doing submissions to the committee that's been set up by Tynwald to look into the structure and the function and of the department, and also the education bill that's coming through. And we've also got an independent report that we'll be reporting fairly shortly in terms of the department and how we deal with staff and our structure. So there's going to be a lot going on over the summer, and I'm more than happy to meet with union officials at any time they want.
Are the unions squabbling between each other? There are 4 of them, and inevitably unions will want to poach each other's members. Every union wants to get as many members as possible. Would it be better if just one union was negotiating?
I don't think anyone's squabbling, and I'm not just being careful with my words, because I'm a politician, and I really do. I'd like to think that I treat all the teachers on this island with the utmost respect for what they do and their representatives. We live in a democracy. People can join a union that they want to represent them. And as you say, there are 4 different unions. Each of them have had different histories. A lot of them concentrate on head teachers. Some concentrate on middle grade teachers as well. And they're all at the table in terms of negotiations. What's been happening since the beginning of this year is joint negotiations. So all 4 unions have been around the table at the same time. And I think that's key. One of the issues we had previously was trying to do a deal with one union and then getting everyone else to accept it. Now we're working with all 4. And I certainly think that's the way forward.
Well, will the Minister advise when he's going to publish the report into online learning provision?
Absolutely. We've got a consultation going on at the moment in terms of parents and students. We had a consultation before the schools closed in terms of teachers. We're going to be putting that together over the summer, using some of the research that's already been done by some of the schools themselves and coming up with a report. More than happy to publish that. This isn't going to be used as a stick to beat anyone with, I promise, despite what's being put on social media. This is a way of trying to look back and learn the lessons of what we went through. Things we got right, things we got wrong. Learn the lessons in the United Kingdom as well, and the platforms that worked for students, so that we can actually go forward in terms of remote learning, either if we're faced with an epidemic again, but also the knock-on effects of people who can't get to school because of illnesses, because of shielding, because of exclusion, how we can widen education and use those tools in the best way possible.
We're on through till 1 today on the Mannin Line.
Listen to us on your smart speaker. Alexa, play Manx Radio.
Text 166 email studio@manxradio.com. We've not touched sport yet. We haven't touched culture yet with Dr. Alex Allinson.
With everything that's going on around us, there's a pleasure in store. An invitation to choose a case of 6 of the same great wines from around the world and only pay for 5. Starting at £35 for 6 to the ultimate. Choose selected Sainsbury's Taste the Difference wines, Prosecco, or even the finest champagne. Indulgent? Well deserved, I'd say. The 6 for 5 summer wine offer at ShopRite and WineRite, proudly locally owned.
Never before have I seen such natural beauty. Yards of luscious green grass to my right are bordered by beds of tall sunflowers as graceful aromatic lilies embrace the sunshine, hugging a majestic wooden structure, looking wisely over its kingdom. This garden could be your reality. The Southern Home and Garden Store showroom is now open 7 days a week. Visit the showroom on the Balthain Estate or view Southern Home and Garden Store on Facebook.
RexMotorCompany.im. When you need to replace your vehicles, it can be hard deciding on whether to lease a car or to buy a car. That's why at Rex Motor Company, we offer both fixed cost leasing and vehicle sales. For the best deals from hatchbacks to estates and coupes to commercials, visit us at Whitehoe Industrial Estate off the Old Castletown Road or find Rex Motor Company online.
Rex Motor Company, RexMotorCompany.im. Indicators are pointing towards PPE becoming part of our daily life, and wearing certified face masks can assist in the fight against viruses and infections. At STS Manx, we only supply approved certified high-grade KN95 FFP2 respirator masks with free island-wide delivery, giving you the confidence to buy from a local supplier. Certified masks could assist companies with social distancing requirements and benefit the general public. Call STS Manx on 566 060 or email Sean at stsmanx.com.
With people carrying less spare change in their pockets, it's becoming harder for them to make spontaneous donations to charity. So we wanted to make it easier for you to support your hospice. Introducing Tap to Donate. By tapping your contactless payment device on one of our terminals in a shop, you can help us to help you. Because every penny donated really does make a life-changing difference. To find out more, go to hospice.org.im/tap to donate.
Save over £460 by moving your mobile unlimited broadband and landline to Shaw. Bundle all your services into one great package right now. Simply sign up to a 24-month contract with Shaw. Enjoy all 3 services and save. Get more for less. So pop in store today and set up your very own great value big bundle. For details, visit shaw.com.
Get more from Shaw. The Mannin Line with Andy Wint. Furnished by Magic Carpets.
And Dr. Alex Allinson. One simple word, Dr. Allinson, flume.
Flumes, yes.
What's the situation?
So I think the ongoing saga, most people are aware of it, and I made a commitment in Tynwald to try to get this sorted.
This is the flume at the NSC.
The flume at the NSC. It was taken down. A new one was meant to be put up. When it was put up, there were engineering problems with it. It was wobbly. To come up with a technical term, and so it's now had to be redesigned. That's happening at the moment. The department are working with the contractors, who are then working with the subcontractors to get a decent outcome so that we can get it up and running this year. I was constantly asked for a date. I said at end of September. I will try to stick to that, but as I said, we're in almost daily consultation with the various companies involved. We will try to get it fixed as soon as we possibly can, but make sure when it's fixed, it's fixed for good.
Are we quids out on this? Have we lost money on this thing?
We've lost money because people haven't been going to the NSC. They and I apologise.
You know what I mean?
I apologise for this. There will be some extra costs, and we're dealing with the various contractors to minimise those to the taxpayer. But I've said previously, I'm embarrassed by this. We should have got it fixed. Previously, it's been more technical than we thought. And then you throw in a viral pandemic and nobody travelling backwards and forwards. That's added to it. One of the things I'll probably end up doing is doing another statement to Tynwald when we reopen after the summer recess to make sure that all this is made public and we can get the NSC back 100% as soon as we can.
A question regarding the Bund School, Gilgach, the Manx Language School, which was run by a charity which has now come under the auspices of the department.
It has
and
indeed.
For many people, the Bund School, the Manx Language School, was a labour of love. Now it's within government. Is it going to retain its integrity?
Absolutely. One of the funny things about the last Tynwald is I had a long speech about the Bund School and the importance of it, and actually on Tynwald Day went over and had a look round it with some of the people who'd set up the charity in the first place. An order was passed without any debate or anything like that, bringing it in to mainstream education, but it will still keep its independent nature, its own culture. What we're doing is actually bringing it into the fold, making sure it's fully funded, making sure the staff there have the right contracts in terms of maternity pay, in terms of pensions. It is part of education, part of mainstream education, and shall stay as a Manx language school.
And it's world renowned. It has attention from
Absolutely.
when Manx was on the endangered species list, as it were. The Bund School is a fundamental fulcrum of maintaining the Manx language, and that will happen.
Absolutely. And actually with organisations like the British Irish Council now, I think we have a better appreciation of the importance of culture, particularly Manx culture, particularly Manx language. And the fact a language has to be a living thing. It's not just something that's written down. It has to be spoken, and it has to evolve as new words come up in English, so they have to be adapted to Manx. And certainly the Bund School is an intrinsic part of that, not just regeneration of Manx culture, but that perpetuation of Manx language.
Plans by the Department of Infrastructure for a concrete wall, a reconstructed road and new footpaths are at Ramsey Town Hall at the moment. The commissioners don't go for it as well. Ramsey is at the highest risk of flooding in the Isle of Man. That's Arup, the engineering consultants, say. Now, the plans are going to be discussed tomorrow between 10 and 2. Where does one of the Ramsey MHK stand on this?
Yeah. I'd like to thank the DOI for coming forward with this scheme because it's long overdue. One of the issues Ramsey has is river flooding from the Sulby River coming down, but also coastal flooding at a really high tide with storms, and we've had that several times over the last few decades. What they've come forward with is an ambitious scheme to build a wall around the harbour, but we've got a working harbour, so you need to accommodate the fishing boats. You also need to accommodate the parking there, you need to accommodate pedestrians, and you need to rebuild the quayside there as well, because that needs doing. It is a big job.
Where does it need rebuilding?
Right the way along. If you drive along the quayside, the tarmac there isn't brilliant, and also the infrastructure underneath in terms of the drains need redoing. So part of the scheme in terms of the seawall is also to redo the roadway itself as well. So it's not just a matter of putting some bricks up and hoping we can do a kink and ute and keep the tides from coming over. What the Department of Infrastructure are now doing is a proper consultation. The commissioners had issues in terms of parking. Everyone goes on about parking in Ramsey, and it is very important, but we need to get the balance right between cars parked and people being able to sit by the harbour side and enjoy it as an amenity, because it's one of the high points of Ramsey. So I'm hoping that as many local people can go down, see the pictures, have their views. I've met with the Department of Infrastructure, with Laurie Hooper, my counterpart in Ramsey. They're very amenable to discussion about this. They're not trying to impose anything on Ramsey, but we need to get something that's right for the local people and does the job to try to stop the risk of flooding or at least reduce it.
Rebuilding the quayside sounds like a lot of money.
It is, and one of the things...
Millions.
Absolutely. One of the things that the Department of Infrastructure have been doing over the last couple of years, if you leave aside the prom scheme, is actually upgrading a lot of the roads around the island. It always makes me laugh when I'm driving into work and I hear Manx Radio talking about the number of roadworks here. Work's being done. They're getting on with the job, and they're trying to prioritise those roads that are really important for commuters but also for local people. So even in Ramsey, we've had lots of roads being resurfaced over the last 12 months, and that will continue. The flood defences is important, though. We've concentrated a lot on Laxey and obviously the devastating floods they had, but we've similarly seen problems in Ramsey as well, particularly along the quayside and Parliament Street. And so this is part of a wider scheme of making the entire island more resilient to flooding, especially when we're talking about global warming and rising sea levels as well.
Dr. Alex Allinson with us, and thank you for the hordes and hordes of texts regarding this. Oh, crikey, somebody wants to go back onto coronavirus. Why can't we get a test on return to the Isle of Man and isolate until the test results are known? We need to get back to normal as soon as possible. 14 days isolation is excessive and causing mental issues in relation to visiting families off the island. Are we to be held in isolation from the rest of the UK indefinitely while a vaccine is unlikely to be with us soon? That's from Paul.
Yeah, and I think Paul makes a very good point. My post bag, half of people are saying we need to open up the borders and half the people are saying please keep them shut. And it's dealing with that risk. If with people who haven't got symptoms, if you tested them on day one when they arrive back on the island, you'd only pick up about 5% of those people who'd have coronavirus. So a one-off test doesn't work. You're going to have to repeat that test. And what we've been doing is looking at other jurisdictions, looking at what works for them in terms of the time in between the test and the time of quarantine. And as I said, the council ministers review this on a regular basis on the back of public health advice, but also what's happening around the rest of the world.
Dr. Alex Allinson with us. This astonishing position that we're in regarding coronavirus. And again, well, you do have a medical qualification, so you're quite unique amongst Tynwald. What's the feeling in the medical profession worldwide? I mean, you see briefings all the time.
Yep.
Where do they think Western Europe will be, and particularly the British Isles?
The epidemiology of coronavirus is really interesting because we know that when you get spread amongst young people, and we've seen this particularly in America, a lot of them don't get particularly sick, but we've also seen children getting Kawasaki-type symptoms as well and getting very ill. I think the reality that a lot of doctors have come to is that this is for the long haul. The threat of coronavirus, particularly for patients who are vulnerable to it, is there. But we've developed a whole range of different treatments for it. So the dexamethasone, some of the other drugs we've now shown can be very helpful. Nursing patients on their front rather than on their back. Simple things like that have been shown to be effective. But we're also aware of the long-term effects, that even when you recover from coronavirus, some people are left with cognitive problems in terms of their memory, they're left with heart problems, they're left with lung problems or kidney problems. This is a nasty illness that we need to treat with the respect it deserves. Again, the Prime Minister of Brazil, who described it as a little flu, I'm afraid he was wrong. This is a serious illness that we need to guard against, but also treat aggressively when we find it.
What's the timetable on Castle Rushen High School?
The work's already begun in terms of the playing fields there. And what I've been mandated to do is come forward to Treasury with a bid in terms of the entire build itself. We're currently working on the numbers of pupils it will accommodate, looking at the projection figures, and then we can go on about the census and how important that is for future planning and future proofing. But I'm really optimistic we can later on in the year present proposals to Simwald for Castle Rushen High School. This will be probably the first post-COVID school in the British Isles, and there's a lot of things we can do there to make a flexible learning space that not only inspires pupils but keeps them safe from further pandemics if they do occur.
Well, let's talk about the census. The census will be providing long-term information for many, many departments. What's the importance to education? Quite
clearly, we need to try to anticipate the numbers of pupils that will be coming forward in the various year groups. A census is really useful in terms of forward planning for 5-10 years, not only in terms of housing, but also health and education. So we can decide what the schools need to do, whether we need to expand classes or even consolidate classes, because often you get waves of growth of populations and they go through the various various age groups. So it is important for us, but more than that, I suppose, from my point of view, is the quality of education we give to all of our pupils, however many there are in the class.
This is not a flippant question, but I've had a couple of texts about this. The cat that got COVID-19, Did the cat get it from the human, or would the cat give it to humans?
We know that COVID-19 is only one of a whole family of coronaviruses that affect people. We have coronaviruses. I remember somebody contacted me right at the start with a conspiracy theory because Dettol apparently said it was fought coronavirus, and they said, how do they know it was going to happen? Coronavirus has been around for ages now, and it infects animals. As far as I know, that the COVID-19 case, it was a matter of the cat getting it from their owner rather than passing it back. And we know that most viruses that affect animals don't tend to affect humans. That's the problem with this virus that we're facing at the moment, is it's jumped the species.
Do dogs get it? Do reptiles get it? What sort of animals get it?
Yeah, lots of animals can get coronaviruses. I mean, when we look at some of the theories about how it all started, it seems to be in bats that are infected with a whole range of coronaviruses, but it doesn't seem to affect them. One of the issues of climate change is when we intrude on nature, we sometimes discover things and catch things we haven't been exposed to before.
Well, it's a Pandora's box if this has been opened. Yep. Which leads me also, and again, a couple of points in that have said, is our susceptibility to coronavirus just a symptom of our immune systems not being what they were?
I don't think so. This is a brand new virus. When you look at some of the statistics from the Spanish flu outbreak, far more people, particularly people of working age and young people, died due to that. And that was probably to do with nutrition and immunity. This virus affects those people who are more susceptible to it, so particularly people with reduced immunities. I think we have a fairly healthy, resilient population, but as I said, this is a nasty disease that affects people in different ways, depending on whether they're slightly overweight, whether they've got heart problems, whether they've got diabetes, whether they've got respiratory problems. So no, I don't think our immunity is down. I think we're dealing with a really nasty new disease that the human race doesn't seem to have encountered before.
16 minutes ahead of 1 o'clock on Manx Radio.
This is the Isle of Man talking, the Mannin Line.
And Dr. Alex Allinson with us through till 1 o'clock. Education, sport, culture, Ramsey.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Rachel and Tim of Island Hearing in Port Erin are delighted to be open and taking appointments again for all aspects of hearing care, including specialist hearing tests and earwax removal, helping you to reconnect to your life during these challenging times. Please be assured that we are here to take care of your hearing in a safe and caring environment, with home visits available if necessary. Please call Tim or Rachel on 830 722 with any questions or to make an appointment.
I am one call centre, the place to go. Great choice and prices so low. I am one call centre on Domain Road. Cars of every kind at prices that are hard to find. Visit on Facebook to see the range or call 611 040. Great service, choice and prices low. I am one call centre, the place to go.
Don't miss the one and only Paradise & Gals summer sale with genuine savings on our already sizzling prices. Save big on our sumptuous sofas, stylish dining furniture, beautiful bedrooms and accessories. And because we're Paradise & Gals, most items are in stock and available for immediate free delivery and assembly. The Paradise & Gals summer sale starts Saturday. Click paradiseandgal.com. Paradise & Gal. You'll love our furniture, you'll love our prices.
Our border rules are changing, and the community has a huge part to play in keeping the island safe. If you're intending to leave the Isle of Man, you'll need to have a Manx entry permit in place to return and complete a landing form before you travel back. Remember, everyone arriving on the island must self-isolate for 14 days. Visit gov.im/coronavirus or call the Travel Notification Service Team on 687 171 or email tns@gov.im.
Love local, love the island.
Find your perfect Isle of Man home by Murrick Lake. We have a modern development of 8 luxury, spacious apartments with lakeside views waiting for you, with garages available. Visit lakesideapartments.im for more info and show home opening hours.
Manx Radio are all about supporting and growing local businesses. Advertising on Manx Radio can reach 43% of the island. That's nearly 30,000 people. Talk to Ariane on 682 600 and find out how you can get your business on air.
Love local, live local. Discover the brand new Grand Island development of 9 luxury homes, situated in a secluded area of Ramsey. Enjoy large living space and gardens with amazing views. Visit grandisland.im to arrange a viewing.
Love local, love the island.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint, furnished by Magic Carpets.
Good afternoon. It's 12 minutes to 1 on the Mannin Line. Dr. Alex Allinson, the Minister for Education, Sport and Culture, and one of the 2 Ramsey MHKs with us today. Examinations for next year and this year, and a message in from Jackie says, has the department centralised responsibility to monitor the examination boards for decisions on next year's exams? Already the current year 10s have had some of their learning drop from the syllabus for next year. I'm concerned that this group will suffer from serious messing around, and technical term, and needs to have coordinated support for both pupils and staff.
Yeah, I mean, we've got in August, obviously, the GCSE results coming out and the A-level results coming out, but students won't have had an exam for them. They're going to be based on predicted grades, assessments of work they've done already. And certainly the department have been working with teachers to find the best way of calculating those grades so that everyone gets what they deserved. What we've also arranged through Tynwald is to reduce the number of UCAS points, the minimum number that's needed for people to go on to university. I don't want anyone for their future to suffer because of what's happened with coronavirus. And we know that some people don't get the grades that they deserve through predicted grades. They do better in exams. So it's trying to deal with that. But also teachers and other support workers will be helping pupils on the day when they get their exam grades to make sure that they're on track. So if they get disappointing results, to make sure that they can access other courses, they can deal with resits if necessary, and give them as much advice and support, because our young people have been through a very destabilising time.
There was a front page article yesterday on the Isle of Man Examiner talking about organised crime targeting the Isle of Man and drugs gangs, which put, and I had a message earlier on this week that's to put to you, and it was regarding drugs around secondary schools on the Isle of Man and the Education Department's policy for identifying known drug pushers or people who may be trying to infiltrate senior schools with drugs.
Yeah, it's not I don't think it's a major problem right across the island, but I am aware that it has been an issue in certain areas, and schools and the department have been working very closely with the constabulary to stamp this out. We have no tolerance of drug dealers trying to spread their wares in terms of young people and pupils of schools, and we'll do everything possible to cooperate to actually stamp this out.
Are you aware of any ongoing activity by police with this?
I'm not, and that's an operational matter for the constabulary, I'm afraid.
Okay, what will autumn and winter look like with coronavirus? We're back to coronavirus.
We are, and I suppose that's one of the big unknowns, that we've got through this as a nation together. But we know winters can cause lots of coughs and colds, and if you get those symptoms, how do you know it's just a flu, and how do you know it could be coronavirus?
How will you know?
Through proper triage, through the 111 system, through using vaccinations to try to get rid of other illnesses, and through proper testing and tracing. Again, we are in a much better place now as a nation than we were in March. We have on-island testing. We're looking at ramping up the capacity for that. And one of the things with the GP educational afternoon today is educating GPs about the symptoms. We're also planning ahead together. We are part of an intrinsic part of the health service to look after people when they're ill, to answer their questions, to make sure they're safe. And so we're going into autumn, winter with all the risks it poses with open eyes.
The GPs will be meeting, as you say, this afternoon. Will the results of that get-together be made public at all?
We're going to have a very open conversation. Often these occasions are videoed for those GPs who can't get there and watch it. As I said, the agenda is basically with a whole lot of consultants talking to us about their experiences. We try not to share patient details, obviously, for confidentiality reasons, but and in terms of widening out to the public, some of the stuff we're going to be talking about is quite graphic. So it is a closed professional session for GPs also working with their consultant colleagues.
Lots of people have been very aware of mental health issues during coronavirus, during the lockdown as well. It's brought to a head lots of people's underlying conditions as well. And a question regarding children going over to England for university on their first time. There's a syndrome known as Manx student at university. Lots of Manx students, even prior to this, used to chip out after one term. They simply couldn't take being in a big city, a big urban environment, or maybe on a campus university. This will only be exacerbated by COVID, won't it?
It could be, because I think going to university for the first time, it can be quite an isolating experience. And particularly when you get there and it's not even what you expected, that people are perhaps having to keep apart, you're doing lots more things online, you haven't got some of the social life that would draw you into a new community, is going to be a challenge.
Well, Freshers' Week will be different, won't it?
Very different. Will any of the pubs and clubs and nightclubs be open in Liverpool and Manchester and Leeds? I don't know.
What would your advice be to parents who are sending maybe their first child, their eldest child, to university in September?
What I'd say is keep in touch with them. Make sure that you've got that open dialogue with them. One of the really good things that's come out of this whole episode is actually Manx students who've come back to the island and have been working together. They laid on a really good higher educational fair at Ballacameen this month. That sort of peer support, one-to-one support, is incredibly valuable when you're on your own for the first time in the adjacent isle. So if you can carry on talking with your family, share your experiences, there are lots of counselling services available at a university, but also make contact with the Manxies over there. You're not alone. You're part of a far wider community when you go to university.
Can you address this Manx rumour as well? DOI are putting locals at risk of catching the virus. Workers brought in from the UK on the prom have been allowed to mix with the public instead of being in isolation, says Joe.
What I do know is the DOI have been following very closely the policies laid out by the Cabinet Office and Public Health Department. Key workers who come over are treated really quite strictly. They're tested, they're put into quarantine, but after those 14 days have gone, then obviously they're treated, and they've been tested negative, they're treated like anywhere else on the
anybody
island.
who's mixing will have been in isolation for 14 days.
Absolutely. That's the guidelines, and I think the Chief Minister has made it incredibly clear that we will not tolerate people breaking the guidelines, that if necessary they'll be fined or sent off the island.
Okay, and just one final quick, will there be a new school in Onken at any point?
Well, we're trying to look at all the schools on the island to see how they can be improved. At the moment, the main infrastructure projects are obviously at QE2 with their science block and Castle Rushen in terms of a complete new rebuild. But what I've been trying to do over the last 2 weeks is go round to the schools, have a look around them, talk to the teachers, and there are lots of projects that need to go on into the future in terms of improving what we've got and replacing what's past its sell-by date.
Because you would have thought the Treasury Minister's talked about spending money on capital projects, the Manx multiplier effect and getting things. Would education fit into any of that?
Absolutely. Education already has, and we've got some ambitious projects to increase the range of opportunities for Manx students, and that needs to be ongoing. Some of them are relatively small projects in terms of repainting, getting rid of some walls, expanding existing buildings, but some of those are going to have to look at new schools to deal with the growing population that we have, but also the increasing needs of students to have all the right facilities in their local community.
Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
Good to talk to you. Dr. Alex Allinson on the Mannin Line today. This time next week, David Ashford MHK, the Health and Social Care Minister, will be here. If you want to follow up on any of that, we'll be open line tomorrow from 12 till 1. And you can leave a message at manninline@manxradio.com. Thanks to our studio producer today, Ben Hartley. Late Lunch is next with Sarah and Christy.